Hello everyone and welcome back to Red Room Stories. I know many of you tune into these tales to help you drift off to sleep. So before we settle in, I'd love for each of you to leave a comment sharing where in the world you're listening from. And if you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get comfortable, relax, and begin. On the outskirts of the decaying town of Eldridge Hollow, an imposing figure loomed in the distance. The old Reynolds estate. Once a vibrant home echoing laughter, now it stood as a monument of despair, festooned with unruly ivy and cracked windows that seemed to regard the world with an air of endless sorrow. The sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting elongated shadows over the abandoned garden, and a cold breeze whispered through the tattered remnants of a forgotten era, hinting at secrets. Buried deep within the dilapidation, Henry Brands, a recent college graduate with a knack for urban exploration and a yearning for fame through viral content, couldn't resist the invitation of the eerie setting before him. His phone's camera served as both weapon and shield against the encroaching darkness. Stepping over the rotting threshold, the groan of wood beneath his boots echoed like a sigh, a discontented breath of the house itself. Dust motes danced in the fading light as he ventured into the vast foyer, each step releasing stale, musty air that stung his nostrils. The once grand staircase spiraled upward, inviting him to discover the mysteries it held. But something felt wrong. A psychological weight that pressed against his chest, urging him to retreat as shadowy tendrils of doubt unraveled in his mind. He shivered involuntarily, banishing the foreboding thoughts as mere overreactions to a new environment. After all, who would worry inside a house, no matter how eerie, when adventure beckoned? As he explored further, the walls whispered tales of a family long departed, their photographs still clinging to the walls like ghosts lingering in memory. A chill coursed through Henry as he caught sight of their eyes, the hollow sockets of the deceased glimmering like dark wells of secrets. He turned away, swallowing hard, reassuring himself that all he needed was a captivating story to share with his followers. Yet with each shutter click, the air thickened, wrapping around him like a shroud and suffocating the warmth of hope he had brought along. The darkness grew deeper, teeth bared like a predator prowling for its quarry. In the corner of one room, an ornate mirror stood, cracked and smeared, reflecting not just his nervous image but an indistinct movement just beyond the frame. He squinted, heart racing at the sight of a shadow slipping away. But when he turned to confront it, an empty hallway awaited, the silence suffocating. Henry's pulse quickened, the mix of fear and thrill igniting a dangerous curiosity within him. Had he truly seen something, or was it just an errant flicker of his imagination? The deeper he wandered into the Reynolds estate, the more the house whispered to him. A low hum seeped through the walls, a lullaby of sorrow that clawed at the edges of his consciousness. The scent of decay intensified, curling into his lungs, making the very act of breathing feel like an intrusion. As the shadows thickened, the chill became a sharp bite, creeping along his skin as though the house itself sought to claim him as another lost soul. With a sudden crack overhead, the ceiling above him splintered, raining debris, and panic wrapped around him like a vice. Fumbling for his phone, he recorded the moment, a distorted reality of fear morphing into a desperate trust that this terrible experience would garner him likes and followers. Yet beneath the excitement lay a growing despair. Something uncanny stirred within these walls, feeding off his anxiety, flaring his paranoia. In a narrow hallway, adorned with peeling wallpaper that resembled twisted faces, Henry stumbled upon a door that whispered more than creaked. He grasped the cold brass handle, the chill biting into his palm, and swung the door wide, the hinges wailing like lost souls. Inside, he discovered a room filled with old-fashioned toys scattered about, like remnants of childhood. A child's playhouse, long abandoned, dilapidated dolls with hollow eyes seemingly watching. The unbearable sense of being watched gripped him, causing his heart to thunder against his ribcage like a frantic animal. As he picked up a doll, its porcelain surface cool and slick, a dark laugh echoed in the stillness, a hollow cackle that sent goosebumps racing over him. The light flickered, and as he glanced up, the air became heavy with an unseen presence, a tangible force threading chaos through the chill. It was the sudden realization that he was utterly alone. No comforting hum of technology to keep him tethered to the outside world. His phone inexplicably dead in his pocket, swallowed by the estate's oppressive energy. Trembling, Henry felt the boundaries of reality beginning to warp. The walls swelled and contracted with his breath as shadows slithered closer, whispering secrets just beyond comprehension. He dropped the doll as an icy wind rushed through the room, pushing him backwards, forces unseen and bizarre gripping him like ethereal hands. The furniture trembled as if disturbed by something larger, primal, and he stumbled toward the door, heart racing, craving escape from this nightmare made concrete. But escape was an illusion. The hallway stretched infinitely, the familiar turns, spiraling into confusion, leading him deeper into a maze of shadows where the child's laughter mingled with a low, rumbling growl. Henry pressed on, the terror clawing at his sanity, hands trembling against the walls for guidance. He began to see them, figures too small to be adults, darting beneath the tremor of shadows and flickers of candlelight, children lost in torment, their eyes glowing like dying stars. Desperation gnawed at him as he stumbled into a parlor, filled with dusty relics of days gone by, when the world made sense. In the dim light, something caught his eye. A diary on the table, its pages yellowed and brittle. He grasped it, flipping through a tangled web of scribbles describing the estate's sinister past, sacrifices of the innocent, rituals to appease a vengeful darkness that had descended on Eldridge Hollow. That same darkness was here, swirling within the walls, and it nursed upon his frantic terror like a feast. A shattering scream rang out in the ether, and Henry's mind reeled. He felt the walls shift again, closing in, and the realization struck him like a thunderbolt. He was part of the story now, a tether bound to the estate's tragic narrative, enmeshed in cycles of terror played out through generations. As the shadows converged, he could feel their icy fingers clawing at him, beckoning him toward an ending he could barely grasp. Collapsing to his knees, the air constricted. He could barely breathe as the laughter crescendoed into anguished cries. Intense cold enveloped him. The temperature plummeted, plunging him into a nightmare of swirling despair. Henry's thoughts fragmented as he became one with the echoes of the lost children. Their laughter morphed into shrieks of torment, each resonating with the fear that had once animated him. The boundary between him and the house dissipated, leaving only raw, vibrating dread. In a final awakening, Henry realized he was no longer just an observer. He was assimilated, a part of the fabric that wove through the estate's tragic history. The house embraced him, its walls pulsing with newfound life, and the darkness inside him ignited, a symbiosis born of fear and enlightenment. As the last remnants of his humanity faded, he became a whisper in the winds of Eldridge Hollow, the pulse of fate now eternally intertwined with the dwelling that had claimed him. Days turned into weeks, and the outside world forgot the bright-eyed daredevil who once documented his adventures. The Reynolds estate loomed on the outskirts of town, a wicked tale ready to be unearthed. its walls echoing with laughter and cries that only those unwary enough to venture close could hear. And deep within, in the heart of darkness, a new figure awaited, ready to welcome future explorers into the twisted coils of its endless grip, ensuring the cycle of horror would never end. The old lighthouse stood atop the craggy cliffs of Raven's Edge, battered by the relentless Atlantic winds, its once proud light now extinguished for decades. To Clara, the lighthouse was an echo of a past she had hoped to escape, but drawn, backed by a sense of foreboding that had crept into her life like the gathering fog. It was here, on the cusp of twilight, that she felt the draw of family history, a legacy intertwined with the sea's fury and a history that whispered of loss and madness, seeking closure for her mother, who vanished years ago under the very light that now flickered only in her memories. Clara stepped onto the pebble-strewn path that twisted toward the stone structure, unaware that she was reigniting a darkness long buried. The air tasted of salt and decay, and each step felt heavier, as if the earth itself mourned her return. Clara clutched the photograph of her mother, the vibrant woman frozen in time against the backdrop of the lighthouse, a poignant reminder that faded with every passing year. She pushed open the rusted gate, its squeal echoing like a lament through the silence, and as she crossed the threshold, the weight of history pressed upon her. Inside, the walls were dressed with peeling paint, and the ceiling dripped with wetness, a testament to years of neglect. It was here that Clara began to sense the shadows of her childhood home creeping back to envelop her, as if the lighthouse itself remembered her, calling her deeper into its bowels. As night fell, strange sounds began to fill the air, low, mournful. Wails mingled with the soft lapping of waves against the cliffs, creating a haunting symphony that made her skin prickle. Peering through the cracked window, she caught glimpses of ghostly forms swirling within the fog, distant and ethereal, bringing with them the scent of brine and something far more sinister. They were remnants of those who had come before. She told herself, lost sailors and forgotten souls eternally adrift. Clara felt compelled to explore the narrow spiral staircase that wound its way to the lantern room, each creak of the steps beneath her sending shivers of anticipation and dread racing through her core. As she climbed, bizarre shapes flickered at the edges of her vision, teasing her with half-formed intelligences until the air grew unnaturally still, thick with shadows that pulsed like living things. Clara halted, the chill wrapping around her like a vice. It dripped with memories, laughter once echoing through the stone, her mother's sweet voice singing against the roar of impending storms. But those memories twisted grotesquely within her, revealing a haunting truth, depths of despair reflected in lost eyes. She was not merely wandering through a relic of the past. She was teetering on the brink of revelation, a truth that loomed like the storm clouds gathering ominously above. At the door to the lantern room, a strange darkness pooled like ink, swallowing the light that crept through the cracks. Again, Clara was engulfed in sensations, years of silence pressed against her ears as if the lighthouse itself had been holding its breath, waiting for her return. Clenching her teeth, she pushed the door open, the hinges groaning as if protesting. The invasion. The sight before her was breathtakingly surreal. The glass lantern, still intact but blackened, seemed to resonate with energies that defied comprehension. It pulsed like a heart, and above it the ceiling bore the marks of careful etchings, symbols and warnings intertwined, resonating with an ancient language that promised both insight and madness. In that moment, a wave of consciousness surged through her, a rhythm between the lighthouse and her beating heart that blurred the lines of reality. Clara swayed, feeling the ether wrap around her, and glimpses of her mother filled her mind, her laughter, her fear, and the way she had once spoken of the sea as a living entity, capable of nurturing and devouring all it touched. As Clara grasped the edges of her sanity, she caught sight of something unnatural presiding over the lantern, an amorphous mass that seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a wrongness that was almost familiar, yet insurmountably alien. Desperation clawed at her throat as sobs tumbled forth, mixing with the salty air. The mass shifted, almost sentient, and Clara fought against the urge to flee. Instead, she took a step closer, propelled by the haunting, tender call of a voice that, deep within her, she recognized. Her mother's voice, wrapped in layers of sorrow and a longing that transcended time. In that moment, Clara was shown fragments of history coated in darkness. Her family's heritage was one of guardianship, protecting against malevolent forces that sought to claim the lives of the unwary. Yet now, loneliness enveloped her, stripping away her defenses, making her susceptible to the whispering shadows. They swirled and danced like wraiths, beckoning her to join them as the lighthouse grew livid with a pulsing, otherworldly glow. Clara felt herself engulfed in a swirling tempest of memories, hopes, and fears, her vision blurring as she teetered, at the edge of understanding the true nature of her legacy. Was it truly her time to succumb to this darkness, to embrace the fate of those who had fallen before her? As Clara wrestled with the crushing weight of despair, the whispers intensified, promising her reunion, not just with her mother, but with all who had been lost to the sea. Paranoia festered within her as she felt the walls ebb nearer, trapping her in a visceral embrace of nostalgia and terror. Each breath she drew tasted sour, and the once soothing sound of waves took on a drowning roar, a cacophony of anguished cries echoing through her mind. She realized the truth. The lighthouse wasn't merely a relic of history. It was a beacon of a malevolent force drawing in the lost, feeding off their despair and desire until it devoured them wholly. Driven by sheer instinct, Clara dashed toward the staircase, a frantic escape from the relentless grip of the writhing shadows. Each step felt like a betrayal, quiet voices begging her to stay, to give in. But she could feel the glowing tendrils reaching for her, threatening to pull her back into the abyss. The world outside seemed distant, faded, as if time stood still within the lighthouse's sinister grasp. Just as she burst through the door, a cool breeze swept through the entryway, burning away the fog of despair that clung to her like a shroud, urging her to reach for the sea. But as Clara stumbled down the cliff path toward the rocky shore, the cold waves lapped hungrily at her ankles, pulling her closer. Her heart raced, and she found herself slowly turning back, drawn by an invisible thread, yearning for the darkness that offered the comfort of a painful reunion. The sea roared, angry and hungry, beckoning her to join the lost souls swirling beneath its surface, promising a release from the turmoil within. In that moment of indecision, she gripped the photograph tightly, feeling the cool skin of her mother between her fingers as the lighthouse behind her glowed brilliantly, its beacon piercing through the fog, a monstrous eye, watching, waiting for its new keeper to surrender. Clara stared into the abyss and felt a pull, a promise echoing in the recesses of her mind. And as the waves crashed fiercely against the rocks, she understood the price of her legacy. It was not escape she craved, but to abandon herself completely to the depths of her family's darkness. As the lighthouse faded from view, its brilliance extinguished behind her, Clara stood tremulous at the shoreline, caught between the cries of the lost and the desolation that welcomed her into the abyss. A cacophony of sorrow and laughter filled her ears, the eternal dance of the lost, a symphony at tide's mercy, and in the shadows behind her, the remnants of her mother began to form, her laughter wrapping Clara in a twisted embrace. And with one last longing glance back, Clara stepped into the dark waters, surrendering to what lay beneath, leaving the lighthouse's haunting glow far behind. The wind howled through the desolate streets of Eldridge, a small town that had been forgotten by time, swallowed up by overgrown weeds and peeling paint. Windows were boarded, doors had long since been ripped from their hinges, and nature crept, uninvited, into the decay of what once was. Ever since the factory explosion that claimed countless lives 10 years earlier, a palpable sense of dread settled over the town like an oppressive fog. Those who remained spoke of strange occurrences, whispers in the night, shadows darting past out of the corner of the eye, and a pervasive feeling of being watched. Yet for Anna, a recent college graduate seeking closure for her family's past, there was a magnetic pull to return. Anna had grown up in Eldridge, her memories intertwined with the echoes of laughter that once filled the halls of her childhood, home. But her laughter was reduced to a bitter silence after the factory disaster took her father from her, shrouding her family in grief and shadows. With dreams of becoming a journalist, she imagined the stories hidden within the ruins, perhaps finding answers that eluded her for so long. As she stepped out of her car, the gravel crunched beneath her worn boots, and the air hung heavy with the scent of decay and rust. Her heart raced erroneously, a mixture of nostalgia and trepidation. The town stretched out before her, every street a ghost of its former self, but rather than retreat into the safety of her car, Anna felt an almost primal urge to look deeper. The rusted gates of the factory loomed ahead, jagged edges gripping the sky like skeletal fingers. She could almost hear the echoes of machinery and laughter weaving through the cracks of her memory. The sensation of being watched slipped over her, and she shook her head as she pushed through the gate, heart pounding in rhythm with the haunting reminder of her past. Inside, the factory was a labyrinth of crumbling walls, covered in a vine of thick thorny ivy that choked the concrete. The air was cool and damp, a stark contrast to the creeping warmth of her anxiety. As she navigated the maze, silence enveloped her, yet at times she could swear she heard faint whispers, something she couldn't quite grasp. The sound oscillated between a sigh and a call, each echo sending shivers along her spine. With each step deeper into the belly of the beast, she felt an inexplicable force drawing her closer to the heart of what remained. An old storage room caught her eye, the door ajar as if inviting her in. Inside, a single rusted assembly line stretched into darkness, and atop it lay a collection of dust-covered photographs from happier days. There, frozen in time, were her father and his co-workers, vibrant and smiling. But one face was obscured, shadowed as if it had been deliberately hidden from memory. Anna felt an inexplicable sense of anger bubble within her, the desire to unearth secrets long buried. She reached out to grab the photograph, but her fingers brushed against something warm and sticky, her heart thundering in her chest. She drew back, gasping and looking down to find her fingertips smeared with the thick, dark substance that was unmistakably blood. A wave of nausea crashed over her, but before she could flee, she heard it. A soft, guttural murmur that erupted from the shadows surrounding her. Anna spun around, the air growing colder, sharper. Shapes began to form in the periphery of her vision, flickers of movement too quick to identify. They whispered her name in hushed tones, dancing between clarity and chaos, playing with the edges of her sanity. Desperation fueled her instincts. She bolted from the room, the darkness seeming to shimmer and coil around her, thickening the air. Dim light filtered in from shattered windows, revealing footprints embedded in the dust, fresh like someone had been there mere moments before. Her heart raced as she followed the trail, uncertainty morphing into full-blown paranoia. Every creak of the building sounded like laughter, and every flicker of light felt like a taunt. Are they playing with me? She wondered, gripping her camera tightly, the only weapon she had against the encroaching dread. The footprints led her to the main hall, their unsettling presence radiating off the walls. Anna felt a pull towards the forgotten corners of her childhood, but the further she went, the more the warehouse seemed to twist in upon itself, doors closing behind her, paths shifting into a disorienting maze. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, burrowing deep into her consciousness, demanding her attention. She stumbled upon an ornate mirror, cracked but still reflecting the remnants of her youthful spirit amid the madness. But as she stared deeper into the glass, a realization struck her. The reflection was not entirely her own. There was something lurking just below the surface, a darkness that clawed for freedom, grinning malevolently back at her. Panic surged, and she stumbled back, slamming into a wall as the floor trembled beneath her. In the feverish chaos, she spied a door marked "Emergency Exit," a flickering fluorescent light beckoning her like a siren's song, hope mingling with terror. Bursting through the door, she found herself outside again, but the world beyond was not what she remembered. The sky churned ominously, deep shades of purple and green twisting together into a cosmic ballet, and the air crackled with a charged energy that felt alive. Shadows danced around her, phantoms birthed from the nightmares she could no longer evade. No longer the girl searching for answers, Anna stood as a fragile watcher in a world fractured by grief and rage. Reality splintered, revealing the horrors buried beneath Eldridge. The vile fate of those who perished in the factory explosion had unleashed something far more sinister than loss. An insatiable hunger radiated from the earth itself, seeping into her flesh and whispering secrets only the damned could comprehend. As shadows lunged at her, she understood then that her seeking had awakened a force that demanded a sacrifice, not just for her past, but for the very soul of the town that had once cradled her. In the final, agonizing moments, Anna knelt upon the earth, the weight of her ancestors pressing down on her as she whispered their names into the ground. A cacophony of howls rose as the shadows erupted, consuming her, promising that she would always belong to Eldridge, forever joined in horror and despair. As darkness swallowed her whole, the last vestige of her consciousness intertwined with the whispers, becoming part of the very fabric of the air, unrelentingly haunting those who dared to walk the streets she once loved. In the aftermath, the wind howled through Eldridge, whispers echoing in the night, warning others to never return, while shadows flickered at the rags of the old factory, waiting patiently for the next curiosity to summon their wrath. The darkness thrived, and the town's legacy continued, feeding on grief, loss, and an insatiable need for companionship, eternally hungry for new souls to tether to its spectral embrace. The fog rolled in thick and suffocating over the coastal town of Harrow's End, cloaking the crumbling buildings and damp streets in a claustrophobic embrace. Ellie, a recent newcomer and aspiring marine biologist, had anticipated this remote setting to offer solace for her restless mind, a refuge from the chaos of urban life. Instead, the persistent haze twisted the landscape into the uncanny, where every shadow hinted at something lost, and every gust of wind whispered secrets too, heavy to grasp. She had sought the ocean's mysteries, but the reality was a strange, oppressive silence, broken only by the distant caw of seagulls, sounding more like cries of mourning than calls of the wild. As Ellie unpacked her battered belongings in her quaint cottage, a sense of unease settled over her. The air was thick and briny, and the walls creaked like bones shifting beneath a heavy burden. She had rented the place cheap, a relic of the town's faded glory, yet something gnawed at her, an inexplicable disquiet that made her skin crawl and her heart race. The locals eyed her warily, their sunken faces and muted colors merging into the background of a town perpetually on the brink of twilight. It felt as if they were all clinging to secrets, a web of shared knowledge that excluded her entirely. On her second evening, Ellie took a walk toward the shore, guided by the scattered lights of the village glowing dimly against the bleak canvas of darkness. The ocean loomed like an ominous presence, waves crashing against jagged rocks with a relentless fury. She stopped to gaze at the distant horizon, an overwhelming vastness stretching beyond comprehension. But the more she stared, the more she felt a pull, a sensation akin to being drawn into the water itself, as if the sea was beckoning her with promises of revelations yet unsaid. It was in that moment she spotted something unusual, a flicker of light emanating from an old lighthouse, its paint peeling and windows shattered, a relic of a bygone era. Instinct told Ellie to dismiss it, but something deeper compelled her to investigate. She approached the lighthouse, its tower looming like a sentinel against the night sky. As she stepped inside, cool air rushed over her, carrying with it the smell of damp stone and decay. The walls were adorned with peeling maritime maps and rusted lanterns, remnants of long-abandoned lives. She climbed the winding staircase, each creak echoing with a mournful resonance that made her skin prick with tension. At the top, the lantern room was filled with the pale glow of an old lens, glistening like a sinister eye in the darkness. What she found there transfixed her. A collection of glass jars lined the windowsill, filled with murky liquid and grotesque specimens floating silently within. Ellie leaned closer, her scientific curiosity battling a growing sense of dread. Each jar held remnants of distorted sea creatures, twisted and wrong, an unsettling testament to nature's darker genetic expression. In that disquieting moment, she noticed a pattern in the specimens. Each had strange markings, symbols that pulsed faintly as if alive. An understanding twisted in her mind. These weren't just creatures. They were warnings, remnants of something far more sinister lurking beneath the waves. Returning to her cottage, Ellie's heart raced with a mix of horror and excitement. Was it possible that she had stumbled upon something monumental? Yet as the night deepened, so did her unease. The air grew thick with the smell of rot, heavy and choking, intertwining with the salty tang of the ocean. Shadows danced beyond her, windows moving against the weak light as if aware of her gaze. Every creak of the house felt amplified, a cacophony of looming dread whispering that she was not alone. Sleep eluded her, and unease morphed into a suffocating blanket wrapping around her chest, squeezing tighter and tighter. Days turned to nights, a disquieting rhythm folding into Ellie's life. She felt a gravitational pull toward the lighthouse, a compulsion to return to the mysteries it harbored. Each visit peeled back layers of her original fascination, revealing not just the horror of nature, but the townsfolk's dark lore interwoven with the landscape. Tales of fishing crews that had vanished under the waves, swallowed whole by the gao, gnashing teeth of the sea. Rumors spoke of a pact, a sacrifice made to the ocean in exchange for bountiful catches, and with each tale, Ellie felt the icy tendrils of paranoia wrap around her mind, linking her fate to that of the cursed townspeople. One stormy night, the wind howled with a ferocity that rattled her bones, and Ellie found herself irresistibly drawn to the lighthouse again. Lightning illuminated the sky, casting an eerie glow across the tumultuous sea. Within the tower, the air crackled with electricity, fraying her nerves until she was left with only blind determination as she grasped the jars filled with grotesque specimens. Something inside her twisted, a dread realization locking her in place. She was meant to bear witness, or even worse, to participate in a ritual she barely understood. The wind roared louder, a primordial voice demanding attention, dragging her to the edge of the room. As the storm worsened, the darkness coalesced into shapes. Figures formed from shadows danced around her, specters of those lost to the depths. Their hollow eyes glinted with desperation, urging her toward the window. Beneath the tumultuous waves, something vast stirred, an ancient sentience rising from the abyss. It demanded recognition, its presence both intoxicating and terrifying, a promise of knowledge bound in flesh. In a fevered moment of clarity, Ellie understood the weight of the woman's voices, but they were not pleading. They were insistent, demanding. She felt her skin prickle, each cell awakening to a primal call echoing through her veins. The ocean's depths were animated by the presence of the lighthouse, the pact still alive and breathing through time. Something dark within her responded to their call, capturing her essence and intertwining it with the ancient force below. As the storm lashed against the tower, lightning struck the lantern, shattering its glass and igniting an explosive blaze of terror. In the chaos, time slowed. Ellie was caught between worlds, her body trembling as shadows of the drowned merged with her very being, a harrowing convergence of her destiny with that of Harrow's End. Clarity washed over her like the tide, and she realized that her search for knowledge had morphed into a haunting entwinement with a deeper nightmare. She was to take their place, to meld into the darkness, to be held beneath the waves, her fate sealed in an insatiable appetite for the sea's truth. When the storm finally calmed, the lighthouse stood silent, a gutted shell against the returning stillness. The townsfolk, once wary, now seemed expectant, as if they had known all along that Ellie would be theirs, that her ambition would draw her like a moth into the fire of their fateful pact. As she emerged from the lighthouse, the weight of realization hung heavy, and she understood now. They were not merely souls lured to the sea, but the very echoes of those who had surrendered to its depths, and she was engulfed by their song. Ellie had become part of the legend, the latest soul to join the spectral dance beneath the waves. The sea held her tightly, and in the chilling embrace she lost all sense of self, merging with the darkness to become another whisper in the wind. Harrow's End remained, separated from the world by fog and superstition, while the ocean watched, hungry for more. And in the stillness of that forsaken lighthouse, the jars quietly filled again, awaiting the next seeker, the next sacrifice to the deep, endlessly repeating a cycle of curiosity and dread, forever intertwined with the shadows of the lost.